They had died, alone. Caligula's mother, left to rot on a rocky island, surrounded by ruthless soldiers. His brother Drusus, also exiled as a threat to the state. That was the legacy Tiberius left to the son of Germanicus. But now, Caligula would rewrite that story. Standing at the edge of Pandateria's small harbour, he stared down the same path his mother had once walked, in chains. The soldiers ordered by Tiberius to force-feed her had beaten her so severely she lost an eye, and the gods only knew what else she had endured at their hands. Confined to the walls of the same dilapidated villa in which her own mother, Julia, had once been imprisoned, his mother had slowly diminished, growing more thin, more weak. Yet she refused to die until the moment was hers alone. Caligula could imagine her, still proud, still defiant, even in her final days. Her last act of rebellion against Tiberius lay in the sheer will and strength it took to starve herself, despite the daily brutality of force feedings. But she had done it. As Caligula entered the villa, a vision of her life flickered in his mind. The small windows, the dark rooms, a world away from the glowing luxury he had known on the island of Capri. Behind the villa, on a cliff top overlooking the water, stood the remains of a small pyre. Its wood, charred black, had long since crumbled into pieces. On the ground, beside the pile of ash and splintered timber, sat a simple urn, weather-worn from 4 years in the open air. Scratched into its surface with a sharpened object was the name Agrippina. Caligula knelt and placed his hand upon the urn. At least one among her captors had possessed enough honour to burn her body. Lifting his mother's remains and cradling them gently in his arms, Caligula turned back toward the harbour, where a ship awaited to carry him to another island, and the bones of his brother, Nero Caesar. The scene on Ponza mirrored that of Pandateria, with one crucial difference. There was no sign of a pyre, no urn with his brother's name etched into its face. Within the villa's crumbling walls, Caligula found the collapsed and broken bones of Nero, left where he had fallen. They had simply let him die, and then left him there. Placing Nero's remains in a crate, Caligula made the long journey back to Rome. At the city gates, he was met by the people, their expressions solemn, respectful. Escorted by the Praetorian Guard, Caligula led the remains of his mother and brother through the city, passing beneath the arches of the Forum Romanum, until at last they reached the Campus Martius, surrounded by silence. Accompanied by his 3 sisters, Caligula entered the mausoleum of Augustus. There, he placed their mother's urn beside that of their father, Germanicus, and Nero's bones were laid to rest alongside their other brother, Drusus Caesar. After bidding farewell to their dead, Caligula and his sisters stepped out into the light, their grief on full display. Outside, the crowd seemed to sigh, as though a saga through which they too had lived was finally laid to rest. Germanicus and Agrippina, Nero and Drusus Caesar, they were all gone. But he, Gaius Julius Caesar, Germanicus, now the Emperor of Rome, still remained. And through him, the empire would remember his family not as disgraced prisoners, but as the honoured ancestors of a new golden age. Among the many pending trials left in limbo after the death of Tiberius, most of which Caligula dismissed, one case in particular caught his attention. His name was Pontius Pilatus, and he had returned to Italy to answer for his crimes before Tiberius himself. Pilatus's time in Judea had ended, not in disgrace, but in ambiguity. He had been recalled at the prompting of Lucius Vitellius, the governor of Syria. Pilatus had committed no single offence, but his name had become entangled in too many questions: multiple riots, a controversial execution, the brutal suppression of the Samaritans, and most provocatively, a desecration of Jerusalem's sacred precincts. He had smuggled imperial standards bearing Tiberius's image into the city under cover of night. When the population rose in protest, he dispatched soldiers in disguise, men who attacked and killed the demonstrators at a signal. These actions had not gone unnoticed by Tiberius, who at one time was preparing to flee east, should the removal of Sejanus fail. But by the time Pilatus reached Rome, Tiberius was dead. Now it fell to Caligula to decide the fate of this man, yet another relic of a darker reign. Pilatus, aware of the ongoing purge of Sejanus's allies, had likely hoped to disappear quietly into retirement. But the shadow of the former prefect lingered still, and most chose suicide over the trials and executions that awaited them. Pontius Pilate had been appointed prefect of Judea through the offices of Sejanus. He governed with a brutality modelled after Sejanus's vision of order. And while Caligula publicly disavowed that legacy, condemning Sejanus in speeches, mocking his memory, he was not above recognising its utility. The former prefect had sought to centralise loyalty in a single figure, Tiberius and the imperial cult. He bypassed the Senate, curtailed the power of the old aristocracy, elevated his own family, and restructured the loyalty of the Praetorian Guard. These were not betrayals of the Principate, they were refinements of it. And the truth was, Caligula agreed with Sejanus. Why should Rome's aristocracy hold ascendancy? What made them so high and mighty? They were the same families who had cheered Caligula's father when it was easy, yet fell silent when Tiberius called for the arrests of his mother and brother. Only after Tiberius turned on Sejanus did those senators find their courage once again, not to defend the innocent, but to destroy the man they had once flattered. And furthermore, why should any province, Judea or otherwise, be permitted to reject the imperial cult, the singular faith that bound the empire from one end of the sea to the other? If the Jews could refuse the emperor's image in favour of their own god, what was to stop Gaul, Dalmatia, or even Spain from doing the same? And if that were to happen, if the god Augustus were toppled from the zenith of Rome's pantheon, from where would the imperial family draw its divine authority? Perhaps Rome's religion should mirror that of Egypt, where the ruler did not merely serve the gods, but became one. There the pharaoh embodied divinity itself, ruling as a living god on earth, as Caligula's great-grandfather had done when he defeated Cleopatra and became Egypt's first Roman pharaoh under the name Kaiseros. But that was a problem for the future. What Sejanus had failed to accomplish, Caligula might yet complete. And so the trial of Pontius Pilate would have to wait just a little longer. "She's in the vestibule," said Caligula's freedman, the man who served as his house steward. The emperor's grandmother, Antonia, had requested a private audience. Caligula's eyes narrowed. After Agrippina's arrest, it was Antonia who ruled the house of Germanicus, taking him and his sisters in. And during the most dangerous years of Tiberius's reign, treason trials, executions, forced suicides, she had stood as a symbol of dignity and steadfast loyalty. For it was she who had revealed the betrayal of Caligula's aunt Livilla, her own daughter, who had illegally married Sejanus. And not once had Antonia stepped afoul of Tiberius. But at last, the old woman was skating perilously close to stepping afoul of her grandson, her disapproval of his relationship with the wife of Macro no secret to anyone. For Antonia, it was all a bitter echo of Sejanus. The former prefect, who once commanded the Praetorian Guard, had married her daughter Livilla to forge a link to the imperial family, before orchestrating the removal of the heirs of both Germanicus and Tiberius. Now Antonia saw Macro in the same light, just another soldier forcing his way into power, this time by procuring a wife for the emperor, a 40-year-old woman long past childbearing age. If Ennia Thrasilla became Empress of Rome, Caligula would produce no heir, and the Principate would one day pass to her children by Macro. Caligula sighed, glancing at Macro, still silently stationed in the background. "Send her in," he finally said to his steward. Antonia entered, stoic as ever, her head high, her presence controlled and deliberate. She moved with intent, then stopped when her eyes found Macro. "May I speak with you in private?" she asked, now looking directly at Caligula. As the steward left, closing the door behind him, Caligula glanced around the room. "But we are in private, grandmother," he said. He felt her gaze flick between him and Macro, measured, knowing. Then came the sigh, quiet, deliberate. She had her answer. He would not dismiss him. Antonia drew herself up. "Very well," she said. "I have come merely to inform you that I have no interest in vain and symbolic honours. The title of Augusta, which you informed the Senate, now belongs to me. I formally reject. I am an old woman. I have lived too long in the real world to suddenly play pretend on this holy yet theatrical stage you have set for yourself and your sisters. I will have no part in it." Before Caligula could speak, she turned and left the room. A day or two later, word arrived. Antonia, Caligula's grandmother, the last pillar of the old regime, was dead.